Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight. I'm Alexis, and I'm joined by David, of course, for our Shield here reaction, commentary, rewatch series, whatever you want to call it here. Of course, the show for the longtime Shield fan that wants to come back and relive the show all over again. And of course, because this is not catered to new fans, if you are a new fan, you by all means can watch, but I'm not sure what you're going to get out of us spoiling everything, which is what we do every time, because any plot line throughout all 7 seasons may come up invariably on this show. So just so you know, we're going to watch the episode, comment over it, and talk about, of course, everything involving Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And this episode, of course, this is already episode number 17, Turn. You may notice that at least behind me there's a little bit of a different ambiance, and that's because we have a momentous episode. Of course, any fan of the show will never forget the day and will never forget where they were when they watched this episode, simply without even getting any or seeing anything else. One of the most arresting moments in television history, if you are a fan of this show, and especially if you were a fan of Marvel at the time or even now, is just something that has just been literally seared in our minds, and we will never forget that. And this is going to be a celebration, of course, of this big moment that forever changed the course of this show. And if there's any one thing, not that maybe it's possible to do that, but if there's maybe one thing that is singularly responsible for the show lasting 136 episodes, perhaps it has to be this particular piece, because this really, I feel, finally, not in most cases. I think a lot of people were like, okay, maybe some episodes are good, but we're not going to give you any kind of validation or credence, but whatever. In many ways, this was the fruition of all of our wildest dreams. And this is, at least for those of us who watch this in real time, we're like, you see, this is exactly what we've been trying to tell you guys from the very beginning about where we could be, and here we are. That's how memorable it was. And so I just got to ask before we even get into this episode, David, I know you and I watch the shows differently. I watch them like religiously, to the point where it's like, okay, it was on at Tuesday at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I was there. I was watching it live, because and then by the time I got to this point, I was like, yeah, I'm watching it live, because at this point we had seen, at least I did, you didn't, you have a different experience, but at this point I had saw Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and I was like, what are they gonna do? And then I of course I wasn't gonna miss this for the world. How did you end up seeing it on Hulu, or I don't know where it was? Where was it after? Because you didn't watch it live.
No, yeah, I saw it the day after on Hulu, and I mean, I just, there was that reveal, and I was just like, oh shit, Hydra, like, fuck yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. versus Hydra. I was ready for like the next, I don't know how many seasons, for them just to go up against them every single time,
right.
And so that was definitely a fun reveal. And then, I mentioned...
But you didn't see it coming because you didn't watch Winter Soldier. You had no idea Hydra was even a thing.
Yeah, so I didn't know about that. I didn't watch Winter Soldier till many years later. For sure, I saw it after Age of Ultron. And,
That's interesting.
And if you remember in the beginning, they mentioned, it's like, oh yeah, we lost the scepter thing after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell and all that. And I'm like, oh, they actually... they referenced S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that, and so I was just like, "Oh, that's cool. It's more connection."
Because S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually a big part of the Winter Soldier, and you hadn't seen it. And well, I mean, they begin Age of Ultron with a raid on. At that point, Strucker was the head of Hydra. Strucker and Dr. List, who at that point, Dr. List appeared on I think an episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 2. Remember, Dr. List met up with Bakshi, because Bakshi was brainwashed to work for Ward, and Ward was working with Coulson, and they wanted to get close to Strucker for whatever reason. The thing is, Dr. List made an appearance on S.H.I.E.L.D., and then I want to say, did you end up watching the episode, before Age of Ultron of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Because at the end of the episode, they did a little bit of a tease.
Yeah.
And then Coulson even was teasing it's time to bring in the Avengers.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. I was gonna say I remember watching the episode before that, and they raided some Hydra facility. They got a bunch of records, and one of them was where the location of the scepter is, and Coulson says we need to bring in the Avengers, and I was like, oh, and then at that point I wanted to watch every Avengers movie like as soon as they came out, or Marvel movie as soon as they came out. So I watched Age of Ultron, we get that reference, and then the helicarrier pops in that movie, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool. Next episode, we get that thing at the beginning where it was Coulson that gave them the helicarrier, and I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, those were the days, and of course, that was the last time anything was ever referenced.
Well,
but hey,
that one really cool one with Thanos, I thought that was awesome.
Oh no, I meant from the movie side.
For movie side, okay, gotcha.
I think at that point the movie stopped acknowledging, and remember, I keep referencing MLEB's video essay, and I want to keep plugging it because I want people to watch it, because the more people that watch it, and again, I know we had last week we were talking about differences of opinion, and we don't have to agree 100% with our fellow S.H.I.E.L.D. fans, but the more people watch the video, the more inclined people are going to be to go watch the series, and we're all about here is longevity. And that means having the show live on. We're now 4 years after it ended its original run. So the more that we're engaging with it, the more that it lives. And I know that, those, like season 1, season 2, those particular tie-ins, were like, wow. And I feel, again, if you're a S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, you got the best of both worlds. Cause, you enjoyed so much more, I would say, than your average Marvel fan who would like sneer and put up their noses at like S.H.I.E.L.D. Like I also mentioned another show, Love in the Time of Hydra with Jamie Jurak, and remember the podcast that she does on the 10th anniversary of every episode, and when she was in her maybe it wasn't that exact episode, but I know that when she did this episode, she had Clark Gregg on, and I watched that. I think I shared with you a clip about that. But then afterwards, she had somebody else. I forget his name, but he was talking about that when he saw Winter Soldier, and then when the credits rolled, he was like, "Well, what's gonna happen with S.H.I.E.L.D.?" And then some asshole nearby was like, "Nobody watches it, or nobody watches that show," and it's like, it's so weird how a big part of the Marvel culture was kind of like a good amount, like a good sliver of Marvel MCU fans. I think most MCU fans are just like, well, I heard it wasn't good, so I'm just not going to watch it. I think that's the majority of people. As the years went on, certainly. Because, I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. lasted from like, again, 2013 to 2020, so it went even past Endgame. So it was a long time. And so every year there was an opportunity for new fans. But I think as it got older, people who had never seen it were like, well, I keep hearing that no one cared for it and nobody watches it, so why would I watch it? But the loudest voices in the room at that point were like, this show is trash, it's garbage, and they felt so emboldened to say shit like that. And I don't mean outside, I mean in the movie theater. This guy was like, what's going to happen with S.H.I.E.L.D.? And then some asshole nearby was like, nobody watches it. That was the environment. And do you see what an uphill battle this show had to continuously fight? It's just, oh my goodness. But yeah, I can't wait to relive this episode, of course. And in anticipation of doing this one for sure, we went, and I hadn't seen Elizabeth Henstridge's podcast show on this episode. I had mentioned before that I did watch a lot of her stuff from season 7, but in the years after that, she went back and did a couple more episodes or a couple more seasons. And so I actually watched 2. I watched the one for End of the Beginning, which was the episode we did last time, and she had on Paul, the writer from that episode, and she also had Jeff Loeb, and I shared with you a lot of clips from that episode, and they were very interesting clips of some information that Jeff Loeb was sharing. I don't have the time to go over all of that here, but if you guys have not seen that, please go and do so, because it is a treat and a treasure of information. And then, of course, the one that I had David watch, and of course I watched myself, was she had on Brett Dalton, of course, who plays Ward. She had on Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancharoen, who not only were the showrunners of the series, but were also the writers for this episode. So, and a lot of really interesting information came about, which we'll go over as the commentary happens, because I'm curious to hear some things that stood out to David, because for sure some things stood out to me while I was going through all of that. One of the really hilarious things inadvertently, and this might not have been a clip I shared with you, and this is not really related to any of this, but the fact that, of course, I think the only MCU Disney production people from a VFX standpoint that Jeff Loeb ever worked with was on Agent Carter. And it was funny to me how he was like having to explain to these people that they need to get these like VFX out like this, and they were like, wait, what are you talking about? Our usual procedure is, well, we shoot it and then we plan ahead for at least 6 months of reshoots because we're going to change some things. Isn't that the most MCU thing you ever heard in your life? And then Jeff Loeb had to like hold back laughter in this while he was telling Elizabeth, I had to tell him, like, no, this is not how it works. Like, this is going to be out on TV in 3 weeks and this is due by Friday. And it's like these people had no idea how this shit works, and it also gives you a broader sense of the timetable that these people had to work with. I think Jeff Loeb or Paul was saying that the usual timeline for how to shoot an episode was 8 days. And so it's just crazy to me. But I bring that up because, like, of course, an MCU related people who work and are used to their own thing were like, what? Get the fuck out of here. 6 months of reshoots for a show that's going to be on ABC television network? Man, that's insane to me. So I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was funny. So, of course, today is Turn. Big episode in the series. We're going to read our comments from last week in a second, but I feel like, of course, with this being such a big episode, we got to get into some other information here that is very much pertinent. Of course, Turn was the 17th episode of this first season. It was broadcast on April 8th, 2014 to 5.37 million viewers. It was written, of course, by Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancharoen, directed by Vincent Misiano. And here is... Okay. Jeffrey Bell, executive producer, said, "If you look at a 22-episode season as a movie, we're in the third act of the movie, beginning with this episode. And from here on, it's just a full-on action and urgency and momentum, and sometimes it takes a while to set everything up. But we think we're going to bring all those dominoes together very nicely for here through episode 22. And then Jed Whedon explained, from the start, the writers knew the Hydra twist would need to have a personal price to it, either with a death or a turn. Supervising producer Brent Fletcher felt it would have been disingenuous if a member of Coulson's team did not turn out to be Hydra, and added there was a greater impact revealing it in this episode as opposed to the final episode of the season. And one of the things that you'll bring that I'm sure you picked up on, and they mentioned that this also, Paul and Jeff, when they were commenting on episode 16, end of the beginning, and then also Jed and Marissa brought this up, early conversations revolving around picking who it was that was going to be the turncoat, the Hydra agent, were revolved around Agent Simmons, of all people. Like, there was serious consideration, and man, wouldn't that have been a disaster?
I mean, but also
it's interesting, but it's not like it's not something to like dismiss. When I say it's a disaster, because look at what we ended up getting with Simmons. Mm-hmm. And then if you ended up making her Hydra, you kind of break Fitzsimmons. And if you break Fitzsimmons, a big part of the show is lost.
Yeah. Although I would say, I think with her, they would have given her a redemption arc. Unlike what they did with Ward. I think they would have done that for sure, just for the Fitzsimmons relationship. And also, probably why they put her as a Hydra agent or secret double agent.
Yeah, in season 2, huh?
Yeah. So
maybe they got this idea from, and they reused it later on. That's exactly what I was thinking too when we see her in season 2.
But then also imagine, like, you know, because the interesting thing when Ward gets revealed and everything, he's like, oh yeah, I was pretending to be the lone wolf because I knew Coulson would get me because of that. It's like, then and then I pretended to be Fitz's big brother in that situation. That's how I got everyone to like me and everything. Imagine Simmons in that situation. She's like, yeah, of course you guys wouldn't believe me to be, you know, a double agent. This innocent little, it's like, I can't lie, I like to follow the, like, there would have been such a turn, man.
Wow, yeah.
Oh my god. And actually, like, even just thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. What if no?
it would hurt too much.
Yeah.
It would have been too good of a twist where it had the ramifications potentially to destroy the show. So and then the thing is, Jeff Loeb, was it Jeff Loeb or was it Paul? One of them was saying that, I think it was Jeff Loeb, when he brought the idea and who they were thinking of, which at that point was Brett Dalton, who plays Ward. When he brought this idea to the executives, the ABC executives, you know what they told him? No one's going to believe that. He's too pretty.
Wait
Yeah,
a minute, what?
No, this is what they said. This is what the ABC executives were telling them. And of course, like, again, he had to hold back laughter. It's like, they were like saying to the perspective of the ABC executives, of course, that's at the top of their heads. Because Paul, the writer of last week's episode, was saying that a lot of the notes that he got back from the executives were like, this guy's attractive. Can you feature him more? As opposed to Jeff Loeb's notes, which were more character-based and story-based. And again, this is when we say ABC executives had a lot of sway in how the first part of this show ended up being. And again, we've talked about this before, and in that, conversation, Jeff Loeb said that, I went up to my boss and then I told him our concerns, and then my boss went to go and talk to ABC that, look, if we're going to die, let us die on our own terms. Let us do our story. And I think it was episode 5. No, it was episode 6, Fitzed. That's when this happened. And at that point, because so the first 6 episodes, there was a lot of influence from ABC executives, a lot of notes. At that point, they were easing off because the ratings were in free fall. And so everybody was kind of seeing the writing on the wall. And amazingly enough, the executives were like backing off a little bit, but not completely, mind you, because, of course, as I just told you, there was some reservations from them about even having an attractive person like Brett Dalton end up being a Hydra agent. Like, people, they to their mind was, people wouldn't believe it. He's too handsome. That was their rationale. It's like, yeah, that's ridiculous, of course, in so many ways. And then what's interesting also, Jed Whedon had said in the conversation that I had you watch that beginning with Tracks, which I think to me is still my favorite episode of the first season so far. Let's see. I mean, of course, we have this one, but so far anyway. But that was the episode where Skye got shot. And he said that was the point where, I don't know if he legitimately meant that they were mandated, because he used the word mandate. I don't know if they were mandated by the network to be more episodic, because a big critique of the first 10 to 11 episodes was it's not serialized enough. It's not like where every episode is leading off to the other. Like when season 2 happens, that's serialized television. But the first 10 episodes are more episodic, where like at beginning, middle, end, and then they don't really feel or look all that connected. it turns out they were more so once we get into the actual storyline, but they were more connected. They were more prioritizing building character because that's all they could do, as we kept mentioning. But it sounded like Jed Whedon was saying that either ABC mandated them or they felt like they were mandating themselves where they could only ever be in episodic episodes. And he was saying that beginning with Trax and that cliffhanger, it felt like that broke them free to do more serialized episodes instead of just being episodic. So really cool information there to keep that in mind. Brett Dalton first learned of his character's allegiance to Hydra during the shooting of Yes Men, and that has been previously established on this show. When executive producers and writers told him of the twist, of which he said, I just sat there with my jaw open for the next 20 minutes, and they just did all the talking because I couldn't say anything. It was a huge turn. I didn't see any of that coming. I was just in shock for about the next day. Then it sank in, and I started to think, wow, what a cool opportunity, because that ward the ward I thought I was going to be playing for the next few seasons, the whole thing just changed. I think it fulfilled a promise of his past. We got that from the very beginning when he's talking to Coulson about how he has a troubled past and the whole revelation that he just doesn't play well with others. In the hub, we get bits and pieces of his troubled past. This delivers on it in an interesting way that nobody sees coming. So that was Brett Dalton's reaction. And then Brett Dalton also thanked Jed Whedon and Marissa for not burdening him with letting him know well ahead of time. An interesting, I know Clark Gregg has said that there would be times where they would be ready to shoot a scene and then Marvel would step in and say, you can't use that character, you can't do this. Jeff Loeb revealed that there were complete seasons, that there were treatments for complete seasons that Marvel was like, you can't do that. You can't do that. So it's again, people like to say that, Marvel Studios wasn't at all paying attention or at all concerned with what S.H.I.E.L.D. was doing. No, they basically had veto power.
Yeah.
They didn't care what S.H.I.E.L.D. did so long as it didn't do what they were already planning in the movies. And their rule was, you can't do anything in your show unless we already do it in the movies. So I think they couldn't do time travel until the MCU did it first. And if you notice, the time travel season came out the year after Endgame.
Mm-hmm. Which worked out for them, at least.
Yeah. So, can you just believe that? Yeah, it's freaking crazy, knowing all these little details. All right, so for music, composer Bear McCreary had to make sense of several character themes that he had created throughout the first season. The Centipede theme, also known as the Clairvoyant theme, was introduced in the pilot episode to represent Centipede and its mysterious leader. With the introduction of Paxton as John Garrett in Tahiti, McCreary wrote a Garrett theme representing its cocky, confident, and militaristic energy. When Turn reveals that Garrett is actually the Clairvoyant, it's good to actually read this so we can be listening when this happens. McCreary had a bit of a thematic mess on my hands. That's what he said. The Clairvoyant theme and Garrett theme are completely musically dissimilar and are now representing the same person, complicating matters up to this point in the episode. Every mention of Hydra had been accompanied by quotations of Big Shield. So he wrote a theme that we hear in the hub, and so we hear a theme. I think I can't hum it, but I know which one you mean. There's a theme for Big Shield, for the broader Shield, and it also can be used as Victoria Hand's theme too. You notice that Bear likes to use themes for more than one thing, and I think it actually works pretty well because she was the target of Coulson's suspicions. From the moment Garrett admits he is loyal to Hydra, I had to make sense of these themes and redefine the musical rules moving forward. McCreary decided to essentially retire the Big Shield theme introduced in the hub, helped by the fact that Hand is killed in this episode. McCreary then made the Centipede / Clairvoyant theme serve as the theme for Hydra in this season. But then he would make the real Hydra theme, the bum bum bum, or that was a shitty way of humming it, but that one was probably in season 2. I think he wrote, not this season, unless we'll find out right here. Given that the organization's name in this episode and ties to Centipede in the Garrett story, Garrett's theme continues to represent the character in scenes just about him, with McCreary finding Paxton's performance after being revealed as the clairvoyant to be even more fun and energetic. So this theme still fits him perfectly. It just shows us a different side of his personality. McCreary also introduced a new melody, a simple piece of guitar and rhythm section in the scene where Garrett and the other members of Hydra are taken away, while the series' main and recurring characters react to the revelation of their betrayal. On that piece, McCreary said, "I'm not sure we're going to hear this melody again." We never did, I don't think. So I haven't even bothered to give it a name. It was true. It works so well in this singular moment. For the final scenes in which Ward reveals his true allegiance by killing Han, McCreary used only deep, horrifying synth notes, as he and the producers did not want to clutter these scenes with themes and melodies or emotions. We just wanted to emphasize the pure shock and leave the audience feeling dazed at its final unexpected turn. Really cool to hear his thought process. We haven't delved too much into like his thinking as he makes these themes, but it is true how in this situation he was kind of backed into a corner, like, oh, what do I do here? But then it ended up working out in the end. All right, let's see what else do I have here. And we should also note the marketing. ABC was playing up the fact that this is be a direct tie-in. Last week, End of the Beginning ended with a teaser to the Winter Soldier with Nick Fury basically trying to escape from Sebastian Stan, basically trying to hunt him. And on June 2016, IGN ranked this episode as the 7th best in the whole show. But at that point, we still had probably 3 or 4 seasons to go, so there are plenty of candidates for the best episode of the show. Yeah. So a lot of information already for this episode. Any reaction to that, David? Just really cool stuff to learn about.
No, all of it's really cool, and anytime hear thoughts about Barry McCreary and how he works on the music, it's always fun.
Yeah.
Like I understand what he's saying on some of these things, but at the same time, like, I don't know music, so I'm just kind of like, I think I get you.
I think, I'll go with what you're saying. Yeah. And then also, Marissa Tantarowan pointed out, I guess I'll get to it when we're actually playing the episode. So with that, let's go ahead and read off our comments from last week.
There it is. Okay. First one is from Silva Surfa. Well, first ones are for him. Hello, my fellow agents. Appreciate both your commentary and openness to opinions. My gripe with Emma wasn't her differing POV. It was her lack of research and immediate dismissal of lore, and that spans thousands of years. Just wanted to clarify that. Now let's talk out about the Amazing Trilogy of Episode 16, Winter Soldier, and Episode 17.
That's a really interesting way to phrase that. I don't know if I've ever watched episode 16, put on the Winter Soldier, and then episode 17. That would be an interesting watch. It's almost like watching the Siege of Mandalore with episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, on the Star Wars side of things, you know? That's really cool. Although I guess it's a little bit cooler with Star Wars, because some of those characters actually, well, Ahsoka and Rex are not in Revenge of the, but Anakin and Obi-Wan are. They do intersect, but they don't necessarily like. But it's kind of almost the same thing if you think about it, because like with Siege of Mandalore, you got Ahsoka and Rex and our main Clone Wars characters dealing with their own situation, and then Order 66 happens in a movie which affects the show, and then with Marvel, we have here Coulson and his team having their own situation. You have Big Shield and Captain America in the movie, but in the movie you had Hydra, and then there are a whole bunch of these turncoats. I just feel it's really interesting parallel when you think about how they're not the exact same twist, but it's there's a secret conspiracy that happens that catches like the existence of these universes by complete surprise. When you think about the comparisons of the Order 66 and the Hydra reveal twists, and how they both enhance and have been used to tell new stories with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and with the Clone Wars. Really interesting stuff right there. And then, of course, I appreciate the comment, of course, and you didn't need to further clarify about what your exact issues were, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, we definitely understood.
Yeah.
Next one by Silva. I always have to mention the few fumbles that AOS does. One of the biggest is the Agent Blake revealing him to be the leader of the Watchdogs in Season 3 was awesome, but not bringing him back and replacing him with the Superior in Season 4 was a huge mistake, in my opinion.
That's a really interesting conversation, and we're going to get more into that when we get into that season, or those two seasons. I don't know what happened, and maybe somebody in the comments can help share, and maybe I have to look into this myself, but Titus Welliver, as I mentioned, returns in Season 3, and he's shown to be helping organize the Watchdogs, and it is implied we would see him again. And the Watchdogs do come back, and they're a big force in the 4th season, but at that point, you replace them with other characters like Shockley, Ellen Deere, the Senator, and of course the Superior, the Russian, as they call him. And I don't know. I don't know. There was interesting interplay there of a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent funding this hate group. I don't know if they abandoned plans to use the character so much as maybe the actor was no longer available. And as we've talked about before, that happens a lot. And they have to kind of change gears, right? So, I don't know. It sounds that you didn't care very much for Zach McGowan, who played the Superior. I know that, I don't know. I enjoyed his performance. I don't know. Do you have any feelings about that, David?
I don't remember the character. Sorry.
Do you not know any of these people?
No.
The Superior, the Russian, the guy that was like about being the superior man, and like,
okay.
And he's the guy that Ada cut his head off and put it in a jar, and then he kept basically becoming this LMD. Yeah.
Okay.
That guy, who also came back for Season 5, if you remember, because at that point he was working with General Hale. So when you think about it, there's a lot of characters on this show. It's just like I'm sorry if please, David, if you feel lost and you don't remember who these people are, you need to tell me so I can catch you up and help you remember, because there's a lot of characters. And I'm more into it because I just watched a lot of these episodes just again a couple of days ago, so I guess I brushed up more on it because it's more recent. But interesting take there. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if they had Agent Blake come back. And I think they were intending it, but as happens, usually they had to probably write themselves out of a corner. And if an actor can't come back, I mean, that's it. All right, next one.
Okay. This was the first case of trick casting by AOS, as so many fans, including me, thought Thomas Nash was the clairvoyant just due to the casting of Brad Dourif.
Brad Dourif, yeah.
AOS used this trick with Lucy Lawless in Season 2, as you expected to be a new part of our cast.
Stop right there, David. Lucy Lawless was a big TV star. I think she had like previous background with Whedon shows. When she was cast, I remember reading that article and people were making a big fucking deal. It's like, oh, okay, they're bringing in some big guns. They kill her off in one episode. She played Isabel Hartley, who was a close friend of both. In the episode, you don't know it, but she ended up being a close friend to also Mac. And it turns out that she was in cahoots with Mac and Bobby, working for the real S.H.I.E.L.D. under Gonzalez. Lance Hunter did not know, but still, he was very much enraged. Carl Creel ended up killing her, and then of course Carl Creel ends up he's the absorbing man. Carl Creel ends up becoming a reoccurring adversary and then future ally as the show goes on. But yeah, that was that just to give you reference of who that was, and then continue. That one backfired for me personally.
Yeah. That one backfired for me personally, as I love Lucy Lawless. I was so pissed when she was killed off, especially for Hunter, who My hot take is one of the worst characters of AOS.
Well, we got plenty of hot takes, man. You got plenty of hot takes there, and God love you. I don't know. I love Hunter, but that I can't get on board with you there. But hey, you do you.
Yeah, I can't stand him. LOL, but we'll touch on that more next season.
Clearly, yeah. I think that's what we're gonna do. Oh man, I love the hot takes. And then she also had one here that was funny. You forgot one of Sky's name. I had Tremors. I had Sky. I had Daisy, the Destroyer of Worlds, Quake, and she did say this to somebody, I forget, but yeah, at the orphanage. Maybe to Lance Hunter. I think she did have this exchange with him in season 2. But at one point, she did say that the orphanage gave her the name Mary Sue Poots. I wasn't sure if she was serious, but I guess that does qualify. That's funny.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, next.
Next one, Gary Marshall. Critics Corner, all royalties happily received. Love the introduction.
If we have any, we'll send them over to you.
Love the introduction of
One's
reactions, as it serves as a nice contrast to the critics commenting on the show they wished it was.
You stop right there. I'm sorry to cut you off, David, but I'm happy that people, and Gary here thinks that was entirely what I was going for. Because I felt like we end these episodes, we feel good about them, and then I have to read these reviews, which were eye-rolling or enraging, and I think it's a nice balance to just have some joy and some joyous reactions. And I also explained it at that point, was it's nice to have it gives us a contrast, because the written reviews were the opinions of people as the episode aired. One's reactions are up to date. They're today's opinions. And it's really interesting to see how the show is aging. So that's why I wanted to include his stuff.
I've been following One almost from the beginning and have greatly enjoyed his reactions. Currently also following Shelly and Brittany Binges, both of whom have just started season 5, and Darcy watches stuff, who had just finished the first season. End of the Beginning is very aptly named, as it is the transitional period between the almost humdrum, at least in the superhero world, existence of Coulson's team and the chaos that occurs after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. So many red herrings in this episode, including the so-called clairvoyant himself,
the clairvoyant himself,
Thomas Nash. The writer of this episode, Paul Z, mentioned in the live with little reaction that he named Thomas Nash after a 16th century author who in 1599 wrote the praise of the red herring, which is the genesis of the phrase red herring, meaning a decoy.
Yeah. Wow. Brilliant stuff there. And it ended up working amazingly. Right on for Paul for doing that. There are plenty of people on YouTube who have reacted to S.H.I.E.L.D., and I've enjoyed a great many of them. I know that I would watch at the time that it was airing, and even after it was finished airing. The ones that stick out in my mind were definitely Blind Wave. Blind Wave have sung this show's praises, and we shouldn't forget about them, because they have really been big proponents and supporters of this show from the very beginning, and consistently put this show up with the best among TV. And among all the shows that they've reacted to. So I'm very thankful for Eric and Aaron from Blind Wave for, flagging that, waving that S.H.I.E.L.D. flag, basically. And then also the normies as well. The normies have been around for a couple of years, but they have some earlier reactions. The video and the audio is a little rough in comparison to what they have. More money now today, obviously, since they've hit it big. But go back and watch those reactions. Those are really cool. There was one personality who at the end got a little bit annoying, and you could tell that he was annoying everybody else, because he went on this really bizarre rant about how everybody was like crapping on Legends of Tomorrow, and how the S.H.I.E.L.D. season 7 wasn't that much better, and because it was using time travel, it was the exact same thing. And I was like, it was a bizarre rant. No. It was toward the end of the season, and everybody else around him was like, "You're crazy. This is not even close to the same thing."
Mm-hmm. Legends of Tomorrow, I loved the show, but I loved it because it knew what it was, which is just a wacky just they do whatever the fuck they want show. And, like literally had what was it? I think it was like Attila the Hun. And he's like, we're gonna take over. I don't know what they were, New York or something like that. And his idea to take over electric scooters. They were like, this is gonna give us an edge to take over the city. And I'm like, I'm laughing throughout the episode because it's just like, this is ridiculous. I love it but again, they know they're being ridiculous. So I mean, this is way different. The last season, yes, they were getting like ridiculous on it, but it's more so ridiculous on the concept of time travel, I guess you can say. But with Legends of Tomorrow, they were just being ridiculous just because they could. I feel like at some point they realized.
Yeah, season 7 was having a lot of fun, but that didn't come at the expense of story or characters or themes. There were still arcs in that season. There was still story. There was still drama. I mean, things still mattered.
They, at the very least, they took advantage of the time travel aspect. Like, they brought, what was his name? The agent.
Agent Sousa.
Sousa. I was going to say Sue, but I'm like, I know that's not it. Sousa. And then I think they made it to like the 80s or something. And you had that one guy... stealing songs from other bands to make
Deke was he was stealing songs. Yeah,
it's like they took advantage of the time travel aspect,
and they had a musical performance. They had Deke perform one of those songs. It was like, whoa, like that's how much they like. Well, we're here, let's do it. Yeah, cool.
And then last one from Gary Marshall. The Sky Fitzsimmons conversation at the beginning of the episode about following the rules is also a nice follow-up to the Hub episode when Sky persuades Gemma to break the rules. Also, I believe May smiles more in this episode than she has in the season to date. Something must be wrong.
Yeah, because I feel like the week before, right in Yes Man, when what was it? I forget which episode. I think it was the week before when Fitz and Simmons are in the lab. May comes in. And she asks if Sky or Coulson have shown any adverse reactions to GH323. And she says to them, if anything comes up, feel free to contact me first. Smiles like this and then walks out. And then Fitzsimmons are kind of like chilled a little bit. And then, but yeah, this last episode, she very much had a big smile on her face because she also was proud and happy for Sky to be an official S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Which also just fucking sucks, right? Like, she becomes a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and we're about to watch. There is no S.H.I.E.L.D. At the end of the day. At the end of the day for the episode that we're about to watch, so. Yeah. Which is really interesting because if that's a different comparison. All right, are we good with those?
Yeah, that's all.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into episode number 617. Turn.
You're the clairvoyant? That is
But really good on Paul for that Thomas Nash naming thing. The guy for the red herring, like whoa. Who would have thought that? And Emily B also, I think, mentions that in her video, and I think some other people might have mentioned that in the comments as well from previous episodes. I don't want to neglect that. But this episode immediately is going to pick up from last weekend. Just looking at this, like previously on, it brings you back into the tension. It's like, oh my God, what is going to happen? And then right here, Marissa Tancharoen mentioned that this is the first time I think she is correct. This is the first time there is a needle drop. As opposed to just original music by Bear McCreary used on the show. This is, of course, Don't Fear the Reaper. I mean, all our times have come is the first lyric, and that's a great way to tease about what's about to occur. And it's an interesting conversation to have because I don't think they do needle drops very often, but when they do, I have found them to be very memorable. At least for me, anyway. I know that the two other ones that I think about a lot, episode 415, Soft Control, I forget the name of the song, but that one at the end, no, they play it at the beginning and they play it at the end. And then, of course, Orientation Part 1 has talking heads. It's really, really good stuff. So they don't do needle drops all that often, but when they do it, it's with a lot of thought, and it adds a lot to what's happening in the scene. And then off the bat, we get a big VFX shot like this, like, whoa. And then the reveal that who's shooting? None other than S.H.I.E.L.D. And again, here we go.
The damn weapon and kick it over to the
This
stairs,
is
man,
such
now!
a
Now!
great damn scene.
Back the hell up. Over there.
You gotta wonder, like, were they filming from the schedule from 16, or did they have to like just come back into this after like being off for a couple of days? Because you couldn't tell.
Of course, I swear.
Don't lie
The
to
plane
me.
just turned around, for God's sake.
How is this happening then? HQ can override automated control of the avionics. Let's take a breath.
Let's not.
It was a dedicated channel to Director Fury. That's the truth.
Director Fury. We're not headed to Fury anymore.
I don't know where we're headed. You want to explain why you were tampering with the plane's SAT cable?
Sure, because that's relevant. Don't try and turn this around on me.
Well, as a matter of fact,
Everyone's gotta open up here. There's no fucking excuse anymore. Like,
I was trying to speak to Simmons at the hub.
You needed an encrypted line? What's so secret
Oh,
that
you tell me. Simmons and I know you two have been whispering, keeping things from us about the drug that saved your life.
see, it's like Coulson and Sky have their secrets, May has her own, Fitz and Simmons, and then the real wolf in the hen house, Ward.
Now tell me who Simmons is talking to, because if it isn't someone we trust, she's in serious danger.
He has no idea how true those words are because of what is happening at this very instance.
A mole, suddenly our plane shuts down, our communications jammed.
I don't know what's happening. I wish I did. You have to believe me.
No, I don't.
This is really bad timing for May.
Yeah.
Like, really bad timing.
Tell me you got guns on that thing. Coming to you.
I didn't even know he had an icer in that moment, dude. I was like, wait, what the heck just happened?
Yeah, right? I had the exact same reaction when I saw him. Like, did he just kill her? I was like, what? And the way that she like fell back and Fitz jumped and Sky was like,
What are you saying?
She's been reporting on us this whole time.
at this point you have to wonder, does Ward think when Coulson told him that, what, is she Hydra too? Mm-hmm. I think he kind of thinks in a little bit. You'll see in the next sequence, because like, or at least maybe not Hydra, or maybe not. I feel like no. Maybe if he thought she was Hydra, he would know, because they all know each other. All Hydra agents, anyway.
I better not miss.
Awesome, man. Booyah is exactly right.
We swore allegiance to each other, and today that loyalty will be tested. If you waver, you die.
Isn't it amazing how exactly how that scene just played out? You would think, oh yeah, they're Hydra. But they're not. Like, they're not at all. They're actually like S.H.I.E.L.D.
That's a lot of trouble to go through for a red herring, don't you think?
Because the clairvoyant is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Using high-level clearance to...
I'm really curious what Garrett's mind was going through in this moment, because he's just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, he's figuring it out. Wait, okay, no, I'm safe. Just like, you think it's bad, I'm safe.
Why reveal herself now?
Guys.
Oh boy.
Even if it is the Hydra theme song.
That's the theme, by the way. That's the big S.H.I.E.L.D. theme we just heard.
Which you can say is like a hint that's like, no, she's not.
Yeah,
Hydra.
exactly. Yeah. That's true. You're very right.
We don't know how long Hydra's been inside S.H.I.E.L.D., but they are taking control.
Hydra?
Oh, I love this part too, because we're getting also a glimpse of what's happening all over the world right now at S.H.I.E.L.D. facilities.
You're the one who works with the zombie robot back from the dead. Take it.
hilariously calling Coulson the zombie robot back from the dead.
Mm.
Which later in the show,
It becomes one. But then also, now I'm just thinking, like, man, if Simmons was the Hydra agent, she probably could kill him.
Yeah.
I deserve to know.
Don't start with that. We do our jobs, end of story. Let your emotions get the best of you.
It was to protect our team from a monster.
It was to protect her.
If you have the ability to make this right, now's the time. Because you can't make it worse.
That's pretty fucking, I mean, you can't make it worse. By the way, every scene in this episode it's just one of those episodes where everything is just like, wow, wow, wow. And the pace, too. We're just moving and moving.
Mm-hmm.
Who is shooting at us?
Come here, let me catch you up. Apparently Agent Hand is the clairvoyant. So chew on that first.
Again, like, what's going on in his head? And he's, like, looking at it intently. Agent Hand is
the clairvoyant, yeah.
Donnie's weather machine? If they get their hands on gravitonium in the fridge...
It's below the fridge. No records.
Okay.
Oh, gravitonium.
Mm-hmm.
And Coulson slipped up there. He just told Ward where it was. Oh, there it is. There's the little invention Fitz made.
It's called a mouse hole. Cuts through anything, really.
And again, that's another tie-in to the Winter Soldier, because that's the exact same device that Fury used to escape his situation and avoid being killed by the Winter Soldier.
That's cool.
Saffron Burrows here does a great job as Hand. I love her, especially in this episode, and how convincing she is, too.
Either swear unwavering loyalty to Hydra right now, for all time, or share Fury's fate.
I totally forgot about this moment right here. I was like, oh, dang, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Also, Agent Trip. The more episodes we see, the more I'm like, why did he have to die? Why?
Yeah.
Recruiting known enemies of S.H.I.E.L.D., disobeying a direct order, multiple counts, violation of international law,
To rescue our beloved Professor Hall, who ended up dead by his hand,
failure to report the crimes of his protege, Aquila Amador.
whose same technology somehow ended up in the head of Mr. Peterson, and you know his crimes. Yet when we found this brain-dead clairvoyant, Coulson's man Ward shot him before we could learn a single thing about him. The lies add up.
It's a bad look.
I know.
When you put it all together, it's like, oh, shit. That did all happen, and we watched it happen, right? But that was a really effective scene because, I mean, especially when she asked the agent to, like, rack up their supposed crimes of Coulson, it's like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Pave the way for you.
There's like 100 guys out there.
12. Level 5.
So here we have Skye and Ward, and I don't know, when I was watching the show, I feel like, well, yeah, it was obvious to everybody that we're setting up a romantic thing here. It did strike me as a little bit surprising.
Mm-hmm.
That we were already, not that they were, romantically, like, going to be paired up with. I think it was pretty obvious. But I think I was a little bit surprised by how soon some of this stuff was moving. And in this episode, I mean, I'm not saying it was out of left field. I'm saying that, well, when I look back and think about it, yeah, these two thought they were about to die. Yeah, it makes sense to move things along. But I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that I hated them together. I'm just like, it's interesting. But it's funny how that shit all goes to hell in this very episode. So I guess maybe that's just one thing to get out of the way with. Like, here's a glimpse of what could have been. And Skye does like Ward. Until she realizes who he actually is. Which is interesting because in the framework, it's the other way around. And Ward doesn't care. Or, because Ward is a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. But Skye in the framework is a Hydra agent. Loud and proud. And he even says to her, then Daisy Johnson in the framework, well, every relationship has ups and downs, right? It's really interesting. The parallels that happen later on in that season.
Boring.
When we make it out of this, yes, let's have a drink.
We mentioned Victoria Hand in the framework. If you remember, the Ward framework character was not recruited by John Garrett because he's not Hydra in that world. But you know who he was recruited by was Victoria Hand, at least in the mythology of the framework. And then we also do see Victoria in season 7. I don't know if you remember, but we do see her in season 7. A little bit of Sky's theme there.
No, yeah, that fight was pretty good. I would say my only complaint is that it was kind of clear that he was taking like these wide punches. Just made it look a little bit too coordinated. But I mean, like I said, they get better.
It's for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s soul. And murder without consideration is a
Consideration? Consider this.
It's really interesting. I know a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans give Mac a lot of hard time in the later seasons for being the way that Coulson is right here, where he just said murder without consideration. I don't know. People, I think, get a little bit too... They hate on Mac, I think, too hard for, like, him being a moral compass. But, I don't know. Coulson's on that same line of thinking.
It'll be fine. Just being
and I love this right
kid.
here.
The look on his face.
I'm telling you, killing her quick would be a mercy.
I never said Raina had been inside the machine.
I know Agent Sitwell was in charge of filling your ranks, so at least a few of you know what to do in this situation.
God damn.
Hail Hydra.
That little motif there was the beginning part of the Hydra theme he would write for next season. Not the whole thing, but the beginning part.
I was happy when I heard you'd made it through.
So happy you had me tortured for 3 days to find out how they did it.
That's... I mean, I think Garrett was being genuine there, but he's so sociopathic, he can't see how crazy it sounds. Like, I didn't enjoy having to torture you, but at least I shed a tear when I thought you were dead. Wait, what?
I can't be a very big part of that.
I like you, kid. But shoot that one in the kneecaps.
What the fuck?
It's because he has he plans to use Fitz's brain for something. He knows not to kill him off.
I actually thought for a second Fitz was gonna be like, yeah, okay, I'll join you, but like as a distraction or something. But
a ruse or something. Yeah,
that would have been cool.
Is that Fitz's first kill?
I think so, for sure.
Oh. Oh, we had that gadget gizmo that we saw in the first or the second episode? Yeah. This is the musical beat that he was saying, Bear. About probably never using this again. And they never did. But it works for, sometimes you just need music for one moment. You don't need to bring it back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what motifs are for, This is not a motif. This is just a single instance.
Yeah. I wonder what he was saying here, actually. The
traitor, I think, right?
I mean, I'm sure he's saying that, but like, you said a lot more.
Yeah.
All we have is each other. So stay in touch, Agent Coulson.
No, you think of what if situations. What if she had stayed with the show? 'Cause she was a really good agent, really good general, And what we're about to watch happen. By the way, I like this look here that Coulson gives Ward. And you got to think, again, you were saying, David, like what Garrett and Ward were thinking. What is Phil thinking right here? I wonder if he's suspicious. I mean, you gotta have to, because I think he reveals he does have suspicions of Tripp, because Tripp was very close to Garrett.
I'm thinking the ice box of the fridge is a little too comfortable for you.
Here, she's gonna give Ward the opportunity to just execute him right now. And it's interesting because if you remember, David, in the 12th episode of season 7, we see Victoria Hand again, a younger version of herself in the 1980s, the multiverse version of the 1980s. And when they teleport in, because at that point Garrett had taken Gordon's teleporting powers, they teleport in, and Garrett is immediately shot in the head by Victoria Hand. So what comes around goes around, as they say. then Jed Whedon saying the title Turn, Turn, Turn is in reference to Hydra, Garrett, Ward. Turn, turn, turn.
Okay, Hydra. Okay, yeah.
Said I'd tell you about this one time I was deep undercover. The Sicilian backup team. A no-show, of course. So I dropped into...
Whatever the hell Bill Paxton is saying right now, I think it was mostly improv. I think they revealed.
Probably.
Yeah. And then the music here, the synth that they were saying here. And then, again, Marissa Tancherone was kind of saying that this scene, it's supposed to leave you thinking about, like, maybe there was... that moment was supposed to make me feel like Ward was like, ugh, the hell have I gotten myself into? Because I think, a part of him did care for these people, and now he's in this like no-win situation. Like he's fucked, and he's just like realizing that no matter what, like there's just no way to win. So yeah, that was the episode. So right now, let's go ahead and go over to One Media's overall take on the episode, which I kind of skipped toward the end because he was mostly just saying how by the way, go watch these reactions. He has great reactions to all these episodes, but he was just mostly saying how like he when he went into watching the show for the first time, there were a couple of things he knew that were going to happen. He knew Hydra was going to happen at some point, didn't know when. He knew Quake was going to happen, didn't know when or the context. And he knew Ghost Rider was going to be on the show, not knowing when or where the context. So, but he was mostly just going on about how like, he's glad that the Hydra reveal is out of the way with, so now we can talk about the Hydra reveal.
And I just gotta say, had I not known, I do think that they did a great job breadcrumbing us. There's a lot of things that I think, in the way that it was directed, the way the camera focused, the way the lines, the script paced out certain elements between characters, interactions. I think there was a lot of red herrings. Quite literally with Victoria Hand, she has red hair.
And
I know
Thomas
that's not the
Nash.
same because it's herring, like HERR, fish. But anyway, there's a lot of things that did, in hindsight, just point big old neon lights at Ward. And I like that. When you can see the evidence. You can see the buildup. You can see the evidence pointing to the resolution. And I talked about this a lot on the channel, is I don't like when the audience can't play along in the mystery. When there was
Paging
no
Dr.
way for
J.J.
you
Abrams.
to
J.J.
discern
Abrams,
it for
where are
yourself
you?
along the way. Like the show is trying to be smarter than you, or that you don't know enough. I don't know. I hate when they pull the reveal out of just complete left field,
Which
and
is
there was no
J.J.
setup
Abrams'
for it at
go-to
all, and no
for
way
everything.
for the audience to have properly guessed without just throwing a blind suggestion out there. And the show didn't do that. So this is fun. We are in brand new territory, a new landscape for this show, and I can't wait to get into it, dude, because from this point forward, really, I don't think there's any substantial reveals left, like I said, outside of what Sky is. But I think that will be coming somewhat soon. Anyway.
But yeah, that's kind of, again, really good points to put. I love what he was saying about this not coming out of nowhere, because and I know that I was crapping on J.J. Abrams right there, and we should, and so should you, but he's not alone in that. That happens in a lot of different things. When a reveal comes out of nowhere, it's kind of like the worst thing ever, because you don't, as he said, you don't give the audience a chance to participate or go along, and the breadcrumbs that they threw out there they were hidden in plain sight, as they say. And J.J. Abrams doesn't understand the concept of that. His whole thing is mystery box, and it never makes really any sense, and it just comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, this was happening the whole time. It was just impossible for you to tell. That's literally the essence of J.J. Abrams. But yeah, I love his remarks very much so. Any thoughts on that? Before I go and read somebody else's review, go ahead.
No, yeah, I do like you mentioned. There were some breadcrumbs there with Agent Ward, but like it's very little that it does go over your head. But then, yeah, the more you think about it, the more you're like, oh, okay, I guess it does kind of make sense. But
Yeah, there's a little moment to go back and read his and look at his performance. Like, look at the way that he was acting, a little bit self-righteous. When May wakes up in this episode, in this scene, so she wakes up from the icer, and like he looks at her kind of like judgy, like, oh, so you were a double agent too, and he kind of like, without saying it, kind of respects her, because he's doing the same shit, obviously, but because he didn't know. So I think some part of him was a little bit like, I'm impressed by your game here. I didn't think you had it in you. And when he says you're good. And then of course, Jed and Marissa always point to episode 12, Seeds. That's the episode when they're at the academy. There's a moment where Skye is looking at the Wall of Valor for all of the fallen agents, and they stress to go back and look, because in the shot behind Skye, you have Grant Ward, who is looking at the Wall of Valor in a very different way than Skye is looking at the Wall of Valor. So they go back. They've said in interviews to go back and look at that specific instance. But then in the next episode, we're gonna find out he literally recites the same lines of dialogue he told Coulson in the first episode, and you're like, whoa. It makes you believe the whole way through that Brett Dalton knew, even though he had no idea until episode 15, which is crazy. All right, here is who do I have? Okay, I'm gonna go with IGN, Eric Goldman. He says, there was an earlier episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this season touted as tying into Thor: The Dark World that was anything but. Understandably frustrating people thanks to how it was promoted, as the team showing up in London in the aftermath of that film ended up having nothing to do with the story that followed. But anyone who's seen Captain America: The Winter Soldier knew that this show had to be affected by it in pretty massive ways. And here we are with Turn, which essentially takes place during the second half of The Winter Soldier and immediately delivers on everything changes, promise. Marvel is being pretty audacious here. I actually am somewhat surprised they decided to not wait until closer to the season finale to deal with Cap's events. As you had to have seen a movie that opened just 4 days earlier before watching this episode, or you're basically spoiling yourself on certain major aspects of The Winter Soldier. That may be true. I'm going to cut away from Eric's review right there. That is true. But at the same time, I feel, David, you are the living embodiment of, well, you knew the Hydra twist, yes, in advance of watching The Winter Soldier because you watched this episode first, but I feel you enjoyed this episode without having need to have seen Winter Soldier. And I think that's the trick that we need to stop here and remind ourselves that it can be done, where you can have a show and a movie tie into each other, but they don't need to rely on having seen everything for you to understand it. You should watch The Winter Soldier and not having to see an episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. And as well as you should have watched this episode and not feel the need to have seen Winter Soldier. And that's a trap Feige has found himself in, especially post-Endgame.
Yeah. I would say the only one where you kind of had to rely on watching the movie was after Civil War. Only because, you know, that's another one where the show got heavily affected by the movies and all that. But it's just more so like, it's more so whiplash of like, oh, wait, what's happening here? Well, Sokovia Accords? Like, what is that exactly? But the show can briefly explain it to you, what that is. And basically, you know, even if it's just kind of like a whiplash moment of, you know, what the heck is that? You can still understand how it's going to affect the show and everything. You can transition well into what those effects are. So
yeah,
there is that. But with this one, though, you know, again, I didn't need context for sure. It was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course you're going to have S.H.I.E.L.D. go up against Hydra. Like, why wouldn't you, you know? So, but that's the only one I can think of right, at the top of my head of something that you probably would need context for.
There's another one. In season 5, they mentioned Thanos once or twice. They mentioned Thanos.
The thing though is you don't need to know the movies for that one. You just need to. You would need to know the comics. If you don't know who Thanos is, you'll probably be confused. But
right, as far as Shield is concerned, Thanos never comes into any kind of force on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the one thing that like, let's say if you just never watched a single Marvel movie and you only ever watched this show, you would probably just be like, they're gonna face off against Thanos, and it's just like, no, it's only in the movies and all that. It's like I can maybe understand that's like a disappointment and all that, but I mean, I feel like
that's like in the Clone Wars when hologram Obi-Wan is talking to what's it called? He's talking to Ahsoka in Mandalore, and he updates everyone saying that off screen, Count Dooku has been killed by Anakin. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just referencing things that are happening elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. But
and I guess if you didn't watch Revenge of the Sith, it's like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean the same thing with Thanos thing. Like, you don't need to know the movies themselves to understand that. You would need to know the comics, and I feel like maybe if you're watching a Marvel show, you probably look up some things beforehand. So
I feel like that's why it was included. I like even with the Civil War thing, they mentioned Peggy Carter dying and Cap and this whole. I think Jed and Marissa just felt like anybody who's watching our show, like 9 times out of 10. They're watching and keeping up with the movies. Mm-hmm. I think that was the rationale. It's like,
Actually, biggest one, and I can't believe this was our first. I can't believe this wasn't our first thought, but the time travel.
Age of Ultron?
No, time travel. The quantum realm. They used the quantum realm.
Oh yeah. You're right. Yeah. They mentioned the quantum realm. Yeah.
Yeah, they used the quantum realm to return back to their own time and everything, which
they were using the quantum realm the entire time, basically.
Yeah.
And then we actually see the traveling through the really cool VFX shot in the last episode.
Yeah, like you would need to watch the movies to know exactly what the quantum realm is, but they just kind of
explain it.
They just explain it briefly. It's like this specific thing is going to take you back to our own time. Like that's all you need to know. So I mean, at least there's that. But I think that is probably the biggest one.
Okay. Going back to Eric's review. So what was the end result? Something pretty cool. I can't say how the opening of this episode would play if I hadn't seen Cap 2. Well, Eric, we can't. David can, and it ended up playing the same. He continues. But I know the following that film, it added a huge amount of tension to what was happening to the bus. As Coulson, about as paranoid as we've seen him, was worried not only for May, but possibly Fitz and Simmons were working against him. And this was before he even knew about Hydra. But those of us watching did, which worked very well to make every action arouse suspicion. IGN's Roth Cornett and I had a speculative conversation about S.H.I.E.L.D., as you can see below. He linked the video right there. As we both watched The Winter Soldier and said how I felt it would make a lot of sense in terms of blowing up we're two sides of a similar type of person dynamic to reveal either Fitz or Simmons as Hydra. So I was extra excited when they were suddenly suspects in Coulson's eyes. And no, it didn't end up being the case, but this was the most tension S.H.I.E.L.D. has had since it began, that's for sure. The switchback with Hand actually being one of the good guys and Garrett being Hydra was fine, albeit a bit sloppy in how it was handled. Okay? Okay. I'm going to say no, Eric. I guess the idea was Hand either felt Coulson's entire team was guilty too, or they needed to be sacrificed for the greater good, or she was testing her soldiers, such as when she confronted Simmons and Triplet when she ordered everyone on the bus killed. But it wasn't quite clear. And Garrett made it too quick a switch from, wow, you think it was Hand, to kill Hand, we should totally kill Hand, in a way that screamed out that he was up to something. Thankfully, though, he was called out on that immediately and revealed his true Hydra colors. His order to kill Coulson and May and to shoot Fitz who he wanted to exploit for his intelligence in the kneecaps sufficiently portrayed him as ruthless and cold-blooded. There's no way S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't feel like it's getting a reset going forward. The near collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. can't help but do so. So it was interesting to see them use this episode to try and address some complaints about the show by bringing them to the front. I've always felt it was just an odd story choice to have a 6-person team where 3 of those people fill out the techie, scientist, not great in a fight role, but usually is and should be given to just one character. May revealing that Fury was manipulating things to create a team where Fitz and Simmons filled specific roles in monitoring Coulson at least partially explains that, with Skye an unexpected factor. This doesn't let the writers off the hook for initially giving us a team that seemed so oddly balanced, mind you, but at least we're getting some retroactive reasoning for it. It was also funny to see Ward call himself boring, something many who've criticized S.H.I.E.L.D. have also said. I personally think that critique has been a bit overblown, but I also wouldn't call Ward the most dynamic character. It felt a bit self-serving to then have Skye almost immediately say, "You should really look up the word boring in the dictionary," as if to directly say, "See, viewers, you're wrong. We just didn't need that line." Since Ward fighting all those guys at once was truly badass, and the best display we've seen since the pilot that this guy, we're told, was near as skilled as Black Widow. Oh, and then we find out he's a Hydra agent. Yes, the last couple of minutes telegraphed the Ward reveal. It seemed really suspicious the moment he asked to accompany Garrett's prisoner transfer, and once handled him that gun, it was obvious what was about to occur, and I can't fault those last couple of minutes too much, since Ward turning out to be Hydra is a very exciting, appreciated, and even necessary move. Once I saw the Winter Soldier, I was hoping and somewhat counting on one of the core 6 S.H.I.E.L.D. characters being Hydra. Even as S.H.I.E.L.D. was improved, there's still been too much of a sense of kumbaya among the main characters, and it felt apparent that even May's pseudo-betrayal could be about her doing what she felt was right, not a truly villainous turn. The early episodes too quickly forced the "we're all a family" aspect upon these characters way before it was earned, and it was time to really shake that up. Revealing one of them is a murderous Hydra agent is exactly the way to do that. I just hope that look on Ward's face at the end isn't hinting at some insta regret for betraying her. I think there is regret, but they don't end up going back. He gets no redemption, basically. Since we just saw him murder Han and 2 other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in cold blood. I'm not saying he shouldn't have... I'm not saying he shouldn't have other shadings and nuances, but if he's Hydra, let him be Hydra. And they do. This is a big episode with a lot to discuss, so ending on some bullet points. An earlier scene in the episode had Ward pretty much admit his feelings to Skye in a moment that was both a bit eye-rolling for when it occurred, yet also relatively well done. It also turned out to be a nice way to add to the misdirect on Ward, along with his big fight scene right after, so kudos to that. There's no specific moment where Coulson is seen dealing and learning Sitwell was Hydra, though Garrett does mention Sitwell handpicked most of the team that helps him capture Coulson, May, and Fitz, which was a nice nod. Hopefully, future episodes will show how personal this all is for Coulson, and they do. One issue this show has often had is giving the characters a lot of interchangeable quips and witticisms that made most of them all sound alike. That's been less true lately, but I do have to note, Coulson saying "booyah" when he destroyed those drones felt awfully forced. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
I mean, less forced than the Hulk going, bruh. And for people who probably don't know, he said that in She-Hulk in the first episodes, when he's in his it's Hulk banner. I don't know what they call Dr. Hulk,
Professor Hulk.
Professor Hulk. That's what it is.
He said, "Oh, that's right."
Yeah,
oh,
it was like
ew.
he was like, She-Hulk did something like destroyed something. I don't know what it was exactly, but he was just like, bruh. That thing is like, and then I don't know. He explains like that's impossible for her to do or something. But yeah, that moment bothered me in the show just because I can see him saying "dude" But bruh is just a little bit too much, even for me. Even I don't feel comfortable for. I mean, I'm only 26, but I feel like I'm too old to say that. I don't know. Like I say that in jokes, but
I'm just saying it's stupid.
yeah.
And I don't think anybody alive should say it. That's just my point of view.
Mm.
The hologram of Agent Weaver saying S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy was under attack from Hydra was one of the weaker moments in the episode. It probably should have been done via audio only, as it felt like we were meant to feel the approaching danger as she spoke, but it never really sold. I'm a little shaky on the timeline of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in conjunction with the Winter Soldier, given the last episode had the team on their way to see Fury. In Cap's 2 timeline, there are at least a couple of days after Fury's death and the big conclusion with the helicarriers. Yet this episode, which picks up right after the end of the beginning, and then over the course of a few hours at most, has them not only discover Fury has been killed, but also has Hydra get their Order 66-like activate order, which would have to mean it's taking place during the very end of Cap 2, when Hydra has no option but to reveal themselves. It just seems like this episode needed a brief time jump to account for the couple of days in the middle of the Winter Soldier that we don't get. I've changed my mind from my earlier prediction in the video and now think that Simmons is the more likely Hydra candidate of the Fitz-Simmons duo. Oh, I know that at this point it's also possible neither of them is Hydra and Ward was the only one among them, but there's also no definitive proof in either direction, with Ward's deep cover status at least allowing the opportunity for one more surprise. Speaking of Fitz crying when things looked so dire was a nice touch. He's anything but a tough guy, but the tear managed to convey his despair, not of a, oh God, we're all gonna die hysteria. I liked Skye telling Ward he hadn't taught her how to hold up to torture yet, when it looked like Han could be about to capture them and do exactly that. So is Garrett actually the clairvoyant? Unlike Han, there's no more ambiguity about his villainy. But like the fake-out reveal with her last week, I remain uncertain that Garrett being Hydra means he's the clairvoyant, and I don't believe he's ever admitted as such. Hopefully, that's true. He is the clairvoyant, but he has no clairvoyant powers. Mm-hmm. At all. Which, by the way, did you end up seeing all those clips that I sent over?
Not all the clips. I was really trying to watch the whole video, but I got halfway through.
Okay, there is. I'm gonna send you something right now if you don't mind. Okay. Well, actually, I already sent it over to you. So go to your messenger.
So it says, my question for the overall-ish theme of the clairvoyance, which is mentioned a lot, obviously, in this episode. As early as 104, the team was talking about the clairvoyant power and how there has been no one with that power on the index yet. But for the rest of the 7 seasons, there were major clairvoyant issues, everything from half of these things I don't remember. Thomas Nash, this episode, she says, to John Garrett, spoiler, fake clairvoyant, to all the Inhumans with clairvoyance, Raina, Charles Hinton, Robin Hinton, season 5, and the Chronicom season 6 and 7. Was this a deliberate fake to make all the fans believe that it wasn't going to be a big plot point, which ironically became one of the biggest recurring themes in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
That's really an interesting question.
Isn't that so interesting? Thank you.
It is. I mean, when you start mentioning all of the other characters from the other seasons that all kind of had an interest, I think thematically we always liked. I think we liked those notions of what if you could see the future and what would that be like and what would you do differently. And I don't think we made a conscious effort. Like there was no link between like Robin and her dad at the time to like the clairvoyant. I mean, the Raina thing was definitely a conscious thing that we had a real clairvoyant as opposed to the fake clairvoyant because Garrett and Raina were sharing scenes and we just thought, wouldn't it be an interesting thing that the thing he kept selling, this fake stuff, actually became real for her. And so that definitely carried over from seasons 1 to 2. But in terms of like a lot of like the clairvoyant stuff was because we couldn't talk about people with powers. We couldn't say stuff. We couldn't say real Marvel characters' names. There were a lot of constraints put on us. We had to build this Trojan horse and make it work for us for 16 episodes before we could say it's Hydra. And so the clairvoyant became our big misdirect. And it's interesting that she brings up Thomas Nash because there's a little trickery fakery there in that name itself. Thomas Nash was an Elizabethan writer in the 1500s who wrote a story called Praise of the Red Herring. And in that story, he wrote about how the biggest thing that would attract hounds was the skin from a red herring. And that's kind of the genesis of that phrase. Red herring is a decoy that would draw the hounds to the red skin of the red herring. And that's why I named that character Thomas Nash. And it was funny because
that's so cool.
When I was doing my first pass of notes with Jeff Bell on the script, he was like, I think we could do better on the name for the character. And then I told him, and he's like, oh no, that's staying. That's staying. And I was always curious as to, I wonder if anyone's going to pick this up. I wonder if anyone would pick up the guy that they're after or whatever, like, because it's just a Google search, you know? And it was one of those little things that you slip in as a writer that you just kind of hold dear, that you go, I hope that makes it, doesn't get cut, doesn't get changed.
So a lot of really interesting stuff there, but I wanted to play that for this question, for this part of it, because, Eric here, Goldman, was talking about the clairvoyant. And that question that Elizabeth was reading, it really did strike me, because there were a lot of clairvoyant-like characters in the history of the show. So you have, I guess you can consider Thomas Nash, you can consider John Garrett, who was the fake clairvoyant. Then Raina ended up being an Inhuman, but she wasn't the only Inhuman that had clairvoyant-like powers. There was also Charlie, I believe was his name. He was the homeless man, but he was homeless because he got his Inhuman powers, but everybody who he touched, he would see their death, and so with that person. And then his daughter, Robin, who we saw a lot of in season 5, she was the one that was predicting the future. And that didn't stop there, because then you had the Chronicons at the end, and who do they have as their leader? Sybil, who they called their seer. So there was a lot of clairvoyances throughout the whole of the show, and it didn't even occur to me until they put it in that question.
Yeah.
Really, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Like they've just
and then you all yeah.
It's like they're building up to almost like a big threat that clairvoyancy can fuck up.
And then of course, and you also saw Paul there talk about how he came up with Thomas Nash, which is a really cool thing, honestly. All right, and the next one, I haven't even finished Eric's whole thing. He has some bullet points here. Han tells Coulson that she and he are the two highest ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agents left, and she's promptly killed. So it looks like Coulson is now the de facto leader of the Remea. That's what happens. Hydra, having completely taken over at least 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. bases in East Africa, and the Treehouse is a nice way to set up some future missions. Okay. And then that S.H.I.E.L.D. logo replay. And then, by the way, Eric mentions here remember at the end of the Winter Soldier, there's a post-credit scene where we see Wanda and her brother. What's her brother's name? Wanda and Pietro. Yes. When we see them, we also see Dr. List and Von Strucker, who they will come back at the beginning of Age of Ultron. Mm-hmm. So we have that right there, and then of course that's Eric's review, very, very praiseworthy. Now let's see, AV Club. This is written by Oliver Sava. He says in his opening sentence, "My interest in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has never been higher than it has after seeing Captain America: The Winter Soldier this past weekend. It's pretty comical how every single review of the AV Club, they go out of their way to tell on themselves in the very first sentence of their review. I mean, that's basically saying, I suddenly care about this show because of this movie that I saw over in theaters." I mean, I get it. That's not inherently a bad thing, to be clear with you. I'm just saying, this is all that the interest seems to be gravitated toward, is connections. And then we wonder what happened in the 2010s and this decade, where people just became so obsessed with connections and that being the only thing that mattered. And yeah, I'm glad that there are people who are waking up to perhaps that was kind of a toxic thing to be. Not that connections to storylines and mediums like TV and movie are inherently toxic. They're not. They can be an amazing, cool thing. But if that's all you're ever concerned about, then there's a rot that begins to happen, because you're not if you're talking about the MCU, but if you're not seeing or evaluating a show as a show and a movie as a movie, but you're only grading them on like entirely on how well it connects to one thing or the other. That's not what storytelling is. Which is something that Dave Filoni has had a hard time of doing lately, because again, at D23 a few weeks ago, he gets out there and talks about the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and you know what the big reveal was? It's gonna have Zeb. Please clap.
Who's Zeb?
Zeb Aurelios from Star Wars Rebels. We saw him also in the Mandalorian, I want to say. Remember Zeb? He's the big guy that was the original concept art for Wookiees by Ralph McQuarrie.
Ah. Okay. I don't care.
Exactly. But that's what like Dave Filoni's entire like career lately has just been about that. And before anybody comes at me, I was one of the first few people that loved Dave Filoni. Like when everybody was bitching and whining about Ahsoka, kill her, kill me, kill all of us. Remember when John Campea was there in response to the Ahsoka character? He said he literally wanted to go up to people and kill them and strangle them because of how much he hated Ahsoka. There were people who fucking hated her. I wasn't one of those people. I was with Dave Filoni from day fucking one. So fuck you, you're gonna come at me. And Clone Wars is great, and Rebels is great. But lately, things have not been great. And I think part of the reason is because there's just been too much focus on connections, and not enough focus on the actual damn story. Which is something the people on this show, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., never once sacrificed. The quality of their storytelling for the sake of a damn connection. And, by the way, all those things we mentioned, the Civil War thing, the Quantum Mania, the Quantum Realm thing, the Thanos thing, those things were just like little things thrown in there for fans. At no point did they ever come at the expense of you enjoying the story that was going on.
Yeah. You just shouldn't rely on the connections and hope people cheer for it. I mention these books all the time, but the Percy Jackson ones, whenever the oh my god, what's the word for it? The other books, not the Percy Jackson mainline stories, but like the Kane Chronicles or Magnus Chase. With Kane Chronicles, whenever there was a reference, there was only one time there was a reference to the Percy Jackson side of the world and everything, and I was just like, oh, glad I read this book beforehand, because I would have understood, I would have known that this is this character, and then that's about it. It's like, it's just gone. And then I remember Trials of Apollo, they were like, there's this weird mansion on top of this building, and they're like, what mansion? She's like, there's a mansion right there, which is like reference to Kane Chronicles. They live in an invisible mansion and everything, and I'm like, oh, hey, there's another reference. But then you move on, and that's it. It's like, I don't love the book. I don't love the book because of that reference. It was just a one and done thing. I'm like Captain America. I understood that reference, and that's it.
Yeah. So let's go back to this review here. So seeing the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. on the big screen posed a wealth of questions regarding the future of the series. And while it's still unclear what the long game is here, one thing is certain: S.H.I.E.L.D. is becoming a far better TV show. Turn is the first episode to actually take place during the events of a Marvel movie rather than just dealing with the fallout. And while some of the developments probably come out of nowhere for people that haven't seen the number one movie in the world, the story greatly benefits from the events of the movie. It's just so interesting to me how both Oliver here and Eric on their reviews they took time in their reviews to mention, I don't know how well this plays for people who haven't seen the movie, but for us that we have seen the film, it works really well. I mean, I know we talked about it already, but like, it's curious how they have this reaction to it, because you didn't watch the movie. It didn't matter. It was a great episode for you no matter what.
Yep.
Because it works on its own. You don't have to watch that. Does it add more to the tapestry of the show and the movie universe? Yeah. But you don't need to get it. Which is something that is plaguing Marvel today. It's risky for Marvel to spoil almost all the major events in its new blockbuster in this episode, but the studio is probably assuming that most of the S.H.I.E.L.D. audience saw the Winter Soldier on opening weekend. Plus, how many MCU fans are watching S.H.I.E.L.D.? That was another thing. It would be far worse if this series didn't immediately pick up on the cataclysmic SHIELD changes in the film. The Winter Soldier is planned far ahead of this TV show, so the writers of the series knew going in that there was a major upheaval in the first back half of the season. But the relationship between the two narratives isn't entirely beneficial. The beginning of this series suffered from a lack of a strong antagonist, and while it becomes clear in retrospect that the enemy is SHIELD and the Hydra agents that have secretly infiltrated it, the writers couldn't hint at that too heavily because it would spoil the Winter Soldier, which is true. They were told they couldn't have stories about anybody in SHIELD being a bad guy. They couldn't have any stories about anybody in SHIELD being a double agent at all, because it would possibly hint at this movie. That's what they were told. It made for a listless start, Oliver says. But now all the juicy secrets have been revealed. The momentum is picking up and the show is becoming much more complex and captivating. The reveals make sense of a lot of the problems of those early episodes, specifically why Coulson wasn't given his team. Why Coulson was given his team. The point of all those case of the week stories and why Agent Ward has been so uninteresting. Turn immediately feels different thanks to Blue Oyster Cult musical cue at the start of Don't Fear the Reaper sets the tone. Agent Garrett is listening to the song when two SHIELD drones ambush him. The episode definitely pushes the limits of the show's CGI budget with 2 dogfight sequences. With the director, Marciano does very strong work creating a sense of big screen spectacle on network TV. Garrett meets up with Coulson and his team after their tense standoff with May, the mole, informing them that something is wrong with SHIELD. Okay, let me skip through this. This is just recapping. I'm gonna skip past stuff that's just recap. Okay, the second storyline is Crippled Winter Soldier. Okay. All those Case of the Week episodes introduced technology and mystical artifacts that are now at risk of falling into hands of Hydra. And while that doesn't make those early stories any better, it makes their developments feel more significant. Victorious Hand assumes that Coulson is with Hydra by connecting the wrong dots regarding his missions. And while he's not working for the bad guys, he did help them by retrieving these various objects and putting them in the fridge, a place that Hydra can easily access when it makes its presence known. Which, by the way, he did tell Ward, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Gravitonium is underneath. Make sure to get that. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Okay. So, the Ward reveal comes at the end of an episode that spends much time building up the romance between Skye and her SO, going so far to include a scene where Skye kisses Ward after the two set up a drink date if they survive. It's an inappropriate time for Ward and Skye to be dealing with their sexual tension, but the episode's cliffhanger reveal of Ward's true allegiance adds intrigue to a layer of manipulation in that interaction. Skye's 084 status and the alien goo in her veins make her someone that Hydra's interested in, and their chat about their feelings helps Skye believe that Ward is someone she can trust. Victoria Hand thinks Ward could be trusted too, but she's wrong. And then she's killed. Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancharoen are the writers of tonight's episode. And if this is representative of what the future of this series will look like, then S.H.I.E.L.D. is finally on the right track. The MCU just needed to kill S.H.I.E.L.D. to make it happen. The action has never been better, from the aforementioned dogfights to the shootouts to the hand-to-hand combat, and there is a legitimate sense of danger surrounding these characters. This series is about the world's most powerful peacekeeping organization, but up to this point, it's felt like S.H.I.E.L.D. has been holding back its punches. Hydra doesn't hold back, and Ward's betrayal is foreshadowed by the brutality of the fight sequence pitting him against a squadron of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. It's a wonderfully staged scene that makes excellent use of a close quarters environment, heighten the chaos of the action, and establishes Ward as a major threat by showing just how deadly he is in the field. One of the best things about the back half of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s first season is that it's considerably fleshed out the relationships between characters, making them more than cardboard cutouts that simply fulfill specific roles on a team of spies. we're not talking about Breaking Bad or The Sopranos levels of character, but at least the writers are making an effort to get the audience to care about this cast. They were doing that the whole time. Oh my God. May's current situation. All right. All right. We're gonna end it there, but obviously this episode is one of the most beloved of the entire show. So yeah, not a surprise that, and of course the tie-ins galore. Not a surprise. Really glowing reviews here. Any thoughts on the reactions to this episode?
No. I mean, it's kind of what I expected. They're gonna love the tie-ins and everything.
Interesting, though, I should say, Oliver Sava's review on the AV Club. It's interesting how he really is enjoying the show a lot more now. He was saying that the show is a lot better. If this is where the show is going, it's going to be really good. And he was even kind of like, there was a lot of other elements of the episode in the show that he was praising here. So maybe we're beginning to see a change of heart on some things, because he was quite savage in a lot of the earlier episodes. And I still ultimately feel, and I think he was just flat out wrong in a lot of those instances. The thing that I keep seeing in these reviews about moments feeling unearned or not caring about the family dynamic, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't. But that's it. We're going to end it off there. We want to thank everyone for watching and listening, of course, and we'll be back next time for more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Thank you all. We really do appreciate it, and we will see you back next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.